Hello, everybody, and welcome back to ZakIsCinema. Yes, welcome back to another video here. Yes, ZakIsCinema is just for all those people out there that just find themselves having absolutely no one that'll listen to them talk about the movies that they want to talk about and that they love to talk about. Well, if you find yourself in a position just like I am almost every single day, welcome. We now have each other here. So yeah, let's talk some movies. Today we're going to be reviewing and discussing the new movie called Together, which came out in 2025. When a long-term couple, Tim and Millie, move to the countryside hoping for a fresh start, a bizarre supernatural encounter forces them to confront the deepest cracks in their relationship. So as we hop into the review for the new movie called Together, I was definitely really looking forward to this movie. I feel like Neon recently has been making a big splash in the supernatural horror and thriller genre here. And it was interesting kind of leading up to this movie because we all heard about the lawsuit or the potential plagiarizing that this movie had. So I'm glad, I don't know all the specific details, but I'm glad it seems that kind of wrapped up and turned out to not really be true here. So I'm really hoping that stays the same, that stays the case. But I was so curious to see when that came out if this movie was going to get delayed or just shelved or thrown out to streaming. But I'm glad that issue has hopefully resolved itself here. But I'm just a big fan of these kind of art house horror movies that also have these deeper themes and messages in them. I like the movies here that find a balance where it's not like beating you over the head with all its themes and messages and just goes way too crazy where it kind of takes out any rewatchability. But those movies that are very art house but very enjoyable, that have that rewatchability with it is kind of my go-to. Like movies like Hereditary or Talk to Me are prime examples of those. So I was hoping this would be another one of my horror favorites or just a big surprise for this year here. Yeah, let's jump into the review section for Together. Now, this is going to be a spoiler review and discussion. It's not going to be a full breakdown scene by scene of the movie, but when I get into specifics of my positives and negatives, I like to go a little bit more in depth and kind of touch on that spoiler territory. Definitely with this movie, we're going to be talking about more of the end stuff. So fair warning here, we are going to be delving into some spoilers and getting into a bit more specifics. But yeah, let's jump into the positives or just the things that I really enjoyed about this movie. Now, right off the bat, I am so happy to say that this is one of those horror movies where the themes, the story, the characters just really connected with me, and it was something so relatable. It does one of those amazing movie moment things where it really has me thinking about the movie long after I watched it, which is just such a huge positive to me. One of those movies that really leaves an impact on you and leaves room for that discussion. In horror, especially that art house horror vibe, I feel like we've been getting so many movies that tackle grief, trauma, and loss. So it was such a refreshing change of pace seeing a art house type horror movie with Together here tackle something a little bit different. There's definitely trauma elements in the movie, but it's really tackling more relationships, codependency, attachment styles, and really delving into a relationship with this couple. So it's very refreshing to see a horror movie with, deep themes and messages, but tackling something other than just trauma and grief. Like I just touched on, I love that this movie is about relationships, codependency, and different attachment styles, and basically how attachments and relationships can really start off as positive and healthy, but really morph into something tragic and scary. So I feel like this movie just sets itself up super, super well into telling a compelling story with a clear beginning, middle, and end, and you could kind of see it like play out like that. So we're kind of following this couple on this journey in their life with a huge change in their relationship between the two of them. And one of my favorite things about this movie, or any horror movie delving into these topics and themes that have these outlandish premises like this one does, is just how relatable it really is, on top of all the over-the-top and crazy things that this movie has in store for you. It's a story that follows characters and relationships that I feel like most people can relate to. In this story, we're following a couple with your non-traditional, unhealthy relationship where they're not toxic or abusive towards each other. Just this relationship has turned into something codependent where it's no longer healthy for both of them, and it's almost this unspoken thing between them. And I feel like that's such a genius premise because it's something that many people have gone through relationships very similar to that, or it's kind of fizzled out because of something like this. Or maybe you know somebody in your life or know that couple that has a very similar relationship to this. So I just love that it's tackling something so relatable that even if you haven't been in a relationship like this, you might know somebody that has been in something very similar, and the tolls it can really take. And to me, this horror movie did something so special where it tapped into one of my personal fears, where one of ZakIsCinema's greatest fears here is just getting into a relationship or getting to a point and place in my life where I become so complacent or just so dependent on another person that the relationship is fine, but because of that complacency or codependency, you start getting agitated, irritated, and despising the other person very slowly over time, and seeing that build up. Like I said, I feel like you know couples in your life that have just stayed together because they've been together so long, and you see where it leads them and that unhappiness that is consuming their life. So just like thinking about this movie, how it's tapping into just one of my greatest fears, ending up with somebody that is just no longer healthy for the both of us here, but it's something that neither of us are acknowledging, and we're just both becoming complacent and slowly withering away. So it's one of those horror movies that really, really connected with me and just like showcased one of my fears that I hope never happens, you know? And I think the movie does such a good job at tackling this, because I feel like it's one of those concerns and issues in either, romantic relationships or even friendships where it's so difficult to really talk about or put into words when people become so codependent that they end up despising each other, because it's not like one specific issue that you two together can address, but it's more the relationship as a whole. So I love that it kind of showcases when it crosses that line into codependency and how unhealthy it can really become, and how difficult it is talking to the person that you have that relationship with. And I think they do a great job at showcasing that. For example, I think Dave Franco and Allison Brie, playing Tim and Millie in the movie, do such a fantastic job at playing these characters, where their acting, the dialogue, their performance really sets up a relationship that has very little exposition but is so interesting, and you could really tell where these two characters are at in their lives, where it's not an abusive relationship, like I said, but it's just so deeply toxic and unhealthy, where neither of them are nasty or necessarily mean to each other, but it's all in the performances and actions and facial expressions that you can really see where the issues are stemming from. And I think they do a great job at showcasing that without exposition too, because there's some amazing lines where characters in the movie between this couple of Tim and Millie might complement each other, but at the same time, it's almost like a backhanded compliment, something that they've been wanting to say to each other, but don't know how to, or the characters say something about feeling trapped, like I know Tim does a couple times in the movie, but try to do it in a nice way and try to just make sure the other person is happy and not mad with them without discussing the actual issue at hand. So I thought that was really interesting too. And I think they showcased that with some great scenes here, especially early on in this proposal scene where Tim and Millie are putting together a party for their going away moving party. And they're giving speeches to all their friends and family at this party. And then Millie ends up proposing to Tim at this party. And Tim is so caught off guard and like freezes in the moment and doesn't know what to say. He even says like, are you joking? And it's just so uncomfortable. I can't remember the last time I was so uncomfortable and like cringing for somebody else in a movie like this. So I love that because of how it made me feel. Like I almost felt embarrassed to be in the movie theater, which I think showcases how the movie's doing such a great job at what it's trying to portray. And I think in this scene, it shows a lot between the characters, but also shows that there's a significant lack of communication between the both of them. And I love how after this, after Dave Franco just kind of half-assedly like says like, of course, oh yeah, I'll marry you. Then one person starts like slowly clapping in the background and they never really address it. They kind of go to bed. He apologizes to her, but they never really address it or talk about what his hesitation was really stemming from. So again, that scene shows a lot of issues in the relationship, but how they handle it shows a lot of issues in their relationship. But they're so focused on just trying to make sure the other person is happy and not mad with them, again, without really delving into what the issues are at hand. And I feel like I've been talking so much about the relationship dialogue and performance. We haven't even gotten to the body horror aspect of the movie, which is absolutely incredible as well. And I love these types of horror movies where you could delve into the themes and messages, pick up on the nuances like we were just kind of talking about, but you can also just treat it as a surface level horror movie of something supernatural going on between this couple who's unhappy, and they end up merging and conforming and fusing together, and you get all the cool, creepy body horror stuff. So you could enjoy it on both sides, which is awesome. I think all the body horror stuff is incredibly creepy, funny, and unsettling. I love the scene you get when they're both in bed and Millie wakes up and Tim's actually ingesting her hair and his body's like sucking her hair down while he's still asleep. I love the scene when they get their forearms fused together and they actually have to cut through them and it leads to a funny scene. And that incredible, funny, and uncomfortable scene when they're fucking in the school bathroom that Millie teaches at and their body parts actually become stuck together and they have to rip them apart. Just an incredibly creepy, freaky, uncomfortable scene that is funny but also unsettling at the same time. So I think the movie does a great job at really just going for it with some of the body horror stuff. I think the movie's pacing is incredible, and while I don't think this is the scariest movie I've ever seen, not from a long shot, but I would say there's some great unsettling images that have really stuck with me since I've seen this. For example, there's a scene early on where I know it's in the beginning, but Millie and Tim are in bed together, they're talking, and then it almost switches over to this dreamlike scene where the camera goes very handheld. It almost looks like somebody's spying on them in their bed, and Millie's turned over when Tim's trying to ask her if she's okay. Does she still like him? Does she still love him? And Millie just in a creepy voice starts saying like, I can't fall asleep, or I can't talk about this when they're looking at us, and keeps saying something like that. And it's so creepy, and it goes to the shot of Tim's parents who died. It's explained earlier in the movie, but they're on the bed. The mom's like has this creepy smile where the dad's like dead in bed, but their beds are like fusing together, also showcasing Tim's fear of turning into his parents and his relationship turning into his parents' relationship. And then Tim like goes to like close his eyes or put the covers on, and then the demonic version of his mom is like slithering up the bed sheets. Like I'm getting like chills just talking about it. So there's some really creepy imagery that just kind of sticks out with you and really sticks with me here. And that's another thing we didn't really touch on, but some of the trauma stuff where I don't think it's as heavy-handed as a lot of horror movies have been as of recently in these past couple years. But they do a good job at showing Tim's backstory when he walked in on his parents and his mom was like creepily smiling and staring at him while his dad was dead in bed. And that goes back to the scene of Tim and Millie in their bed that we were just talking about. But I love how it's so subtle with it too. Like the characters never outright say it, but it's showing that Tim is just very scared of turning into his parents, but he's in something so comfortable and kind of doesn't know what to do, like sees it leading down that path, but doesn't want to leave what's comfortable with Millie. So I love the character depth you really get in this movie as well, on top of all the horror and body horror and relationship discussions as well here. But let's jump into my mixed aspects for the movie. And unfortunately, I feel like I have to put the character of Jamie in my mix. He is this neighbor character and also one of the teachers at Millie's new school she just started teaching at. Very friendly guy, maybe overly friendly, where you start to get the sense that he's kind of flirting with Millie and almost trying to get in between Millie and Tim. And you could tell that Millie is very fond of Jamie here. So I thought he started off very interesting, and I thought it would set up something interesting where we could see this codependent couple have to deal with insecurities and a possible affair kind of going on between Millie and Jamie here. Like I thought it was kind of leading to something more in that way. I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but in the beginning when Millie and Tim kind of go off into the woods on this little hike, they fall down into this cave, and you could tell there's something off and creepy about this cave. And then when they get out of the cave, that's when all the creepy body horror stuff starts going on, all this unexplained stuff. But in the cave, they do a cool job at kind of showing that it looks like it used to be a building. Like you see a church bell kind of sticking out of the dirt in the cave. So you could tell there was something going on there. Then later on, our characters find out that, yeah, there was a church there, but it collapsed almost years ago, and these groups of members just kind of moved on after the collapse. So in the third act, with our character of Jamie, we find out that he was actually part of this cultist church or this cultist group, and he is one of the products of fusing with his other half years earlier, and is ending up trying to encourage Millie to do the same, because Jamie reveals to us that he is a result of this fusion process that this church was working on, and promises that they are happier after becoming whole and becoming one. And, you know, again, encourages Millie to do the same thing with Tim, since it's already kind of started here. And it's interesting, and I think it plays an important role at showcasing how many people in our outside lives can kind of play into a role in enabling these types of relationships, where you're like, oh, there's not a big issue here, you know, he treats you nice, so you guys might as well stay together. But I love how it kind of shows those outside influences kind of helping people just kind of settle and do what's comfortable, even though it might not be what's healthy for both people, and encouraging these toxic relationships. It's in my mixed here because I like what it's going for. Just I absolutely hate how it's revealed to Millie, where Millie in the third act walks into Jamie's home and goes down this creepy hallway and sees the church fusing cultist thing going on, playing on a CRTV on a VHS tape of, you know, showing the ritual and everything. And then Jamie comes in and kind of regurgitates all this exposition to us, and it just kind of, it threw me off because the movie was doing such a good job at not being so heavy-handed with its exposition. And then also in the third act, they're like, oh my god, we got to explain this shit. And then literally show us on a video and then has a character explain what we just saw. So it was a lot of exposition all at once, and I just thought there could have been a creepier, more unsettling way to reveal that information to us. And I just wish that maybe Tim and Millie kind of discovered this on their own, where maybe all of it wasn't really explained, but it hinted at it enough where you could kind of put the pieces together, especially on rewatch. And it just kind of makes me miss on how well Hereditary really did its third act reveals, where you get the character of Annie going through all her mother's things, and she actually discovers the cult her grandma was a part of and part of this ritual that's been going on, where if you miss that scene, the third act is going to make no sense to you. And it's done so subtly too, where it kind of encourages rewatches too to really pick up on some of that things. But in this movie, it's kind of just shown to us and told to us. So I thought that was just a bit of a missed opportunity, even though I liked what it was doing and liked where it ended up, if that makes sense. But yeah, let's jump into my negatives, or just the things that I didn't really like about this movie. Now, after we get that scene, that revelation of what Jamie was a part of and what's actually going on between Tim and Millie here, they end up fusing together in this crazy, creepy, uncomfortable scene where they're making out and their bodies are like fusing together and their hands are infusing into their bodies, and it's just so uncomfortable. Right after that, we see Millie's parents coming for a visit and knocking on the door, and when the door opens, we get to see this combined version of Millie and Tim, where it's just very normal looking, almost similar to what Jamie looked like. But in this scene, unfortunately, the CGI is just so bad. It almost looks like it was played for a laugh, where they literally combine the two characters of Tim and Millie to look like they're one, but the CGI is off, and it kind of threw me off that they were going for maybe a bit of a joke where it wasn't as disturbing and just kind of looked a little silly. Like my theater got a kind of big laugh out of that. So I just thought that was a weird place to kind of end off, because I think it was such a missed opportunity to not have Millie's parents kind of walk into something very similar to what Tim walked into with his parents, with how creepy and unsettling that was, really showing his parents' relationship there. So I thought that's what they were gonna lead into, where maybe it was something very similar, or something similar but more so showing something creepy and unsettling with the fusion, and then you cut it off. So I hate that they kind of went for that joke in it, and I like the idea, again, just showing that they ended up fusing. It kind of went the dark path here, but to play it off as a joke almost just was a little like, like you were so close. I could look past the Jamie stuff, I could look past all that exposition stuff, because where you were leading makes sense, it's so interesting. But then to leave it off on that, it's like, oh, you were so fucking close together. You were so close. Nothing that ruined the movie for me. Just I thought that could have been such a simple switch, and it felt like it was something so easy to what they've been setting up. I'm surprised they didn't really do that to really showcase maybe something horrific with the body horror. But overall, I will say I think this is a fantastic body horror movie that tackles themes of relationships, attachment styles, and concerns couples go through, but many don't really talk about. It's a horror movie that stuck with me, but it does just have a couple things that slightly hold it back for me. So for my rating, this is a difficult one because it's right there. It's right near the tip top of my rating scale here, but not quite there, just because a couple things kind of hold it back. But like I said, either way, I know I want to rewatch this. So I think for my rating, if I found something cool, like a limited edition version or a steelbook, I'd be more than happy paying full price for it. But I'd be okay waiting a year or two where I could get the cheaper 4K that's not full price. But it's definitely one I intend to own, because it's one I'm gonna want to rewatch and definitely want to show some people. So you guys have my spoiler filled thoughts here on the new movie Together. Please let me know what you guys thought of this movie. What did you think of some of my issues, maybe some of my positives with the movie? How did you feel about the ending? I'm curious to hear all your thoughts and feelings down below. But I appreciate anybody watching my videos here. It does mean a lot. So thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.